Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the class breakdown report. This is a report that can give you a lot of good information in both math and reading. It's a report that will be able to help you narrow down and kind of delve into groups of students so that you can create small groups from this report and also see how students are doing in terms of their individual performance. So in order to get to the class breakdown from the home screen, as always, with reports, you go over here to Map Growth Reports. Then you go down to where it says Class Breakdown. You click on that. And then select who you are and select the roster of your class. Again, the roster might be different based on what grade level you teach. Then you have three options. You can break down your class by RIT score. That kind of gives you a larger perspective on things. By goal, which kind of narrows down individually into subtests of how students have done, or by projected proficiency. This is what's tied to I-STEP, so you get an idea of what students are on track of making passing I-STEP or pass plus I-STEP or failing I-STEP. But for today's report, we're going to focus on by goal. So once I click that, I can select the subject down here. I'm just going to keep it on math, and then I'm going to click View Report Online. So the first thing you'll see is a listing of your students and the students' range across the test. So as part of the math test, when you took MAP and NWEA, there were 5 different sections of that test: number sense computation, algebraic thinking, geometry, measurement, and data analysis. And each of these sections is broken down onto how students performed. So for example, this student here, the score in algebraic thinking fell between the 161 and 170 range. Conversely, a student over here performed higher. The parentheses and the score in parentheses, that is the student's overall score. So an easy way to look at this is if this student here got a 166, that falls in between a 161 and a 170 overall. So this is kind of where that student is performing at in algebraic thinking. However, when I jump up to the next block, I don't see her name anywhere over here in this area, right here, in geometry. So I look down, don't see that name. I look up here, and I do see that name. And that name right here is under a 171 and a 180. So even though she got a 166 on the test, that student did a really good job, and this is the area of strength. Conversely, you can kind of take a look at where areas that student didn't perform well in. So it kind of gives you a good range just by looking at this. Also, if you think about drawing a block around these students, so if I wanted to do a number sense small group, I can literally think about these 2 blocks right here as maybe a small group. Maybe I can then do a higher end group with these students right here, so that essentially your small groups for math and also for reading would be picked for you. But if I really want to narrow down into it, what I can do is I click on the student, and this brings up the learning continuum. This is a completely separate report that is linked to the class breakdown. And from this report, it breaks down that test even more into it. So if you remember algebraic thinking, there's 2 subcategories of that: real world problems and unknowns, and patterns and rules. So if I go into patterns and rules, because I clicked on that student, this band is where NWEA is telling me that she is performing at. Again, her overall RIT was a 166, and in this band between a 161 and a 170, this is the skills that are needed for there. If I wanted to push that student to progress on to the next band, these are some of the skills that would be under patterns, series, and sequences and series that student would need. So it's a really good way of understanding how I can both remediate what the student's ready for and what I can push the student on. If I wanted to see more students, I can click View All, and now it'll give me a better idea of who else is in that same band range. So before it was just the 1 student, but now there's a group of students that are in this range. Same thing goes with this group of students. This is the things they're working on. So I can move students anywhere based off of this information. It's a really good way of going into it. I can also display groups by standard. So if I go into, let's take a look at that same area, click real world problems on unknowns. This gives me the standards that students are working at in that age level. So if you if you took a first grade test, you might see some kindergarten standards. You might see, like right here, some third grade standards. Those are all areas that could be used. Really important to keep in mind that this is a lot of information. By no means are you responsible for teaching everything that you see in these areas. This is giving you a good idea where you can get started, especially when it comes to grouping your students and looking at the data that the test can provide. So again, just to break it down one more time, you can select between reading and math at any time. All of these skills are split into the subcategories of each test. You can click on anyone's name at any time and pull up how they fared on the test and what band they are in. And at any also time, you can click on View All and see who else is with that student. It's going to help you with grouping. It's going to help you on what skills you need to focus on. And overall, it's a very, very useful report. So hopefully that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask, and have a good day. Thanks.